Welcome to Talking with Famous People. My name is host Eric, and I am the host of Talking with Famous People. Um, we're talking this evening about the order of attainment for cognitive functions, how they change and grow, and how you attain them over the course of your childhood. Hami asked a question which was, do you think you are born with your first function? And my answer is yes. This is my existing theory on how cognitive function stacks develop over the course of time. Number one, you're born with your dominant function, and therefore necessarily the other side of that coin, SI. So you're born favoring NE, but the SI is completely undeveloped. It's a stub of a thing that's necessarily takes up a slot, but isn't positioned in any slot yet. So you're basically all NE and a stubby little SI. And both of them are going to, the SI you have to work on and develop. The NE is who you are, and it's just that's the core engine of your existence. So then the first thing that you actually develop after that is, and the reason you have to have SI or take up a slot is because the idea of NE is to possibilize and then organize. Possibilize, organize. Possibilize, organize. So you play a bunch, and then you say, okay, this is what I've done. And then you play a bunch, and you say, okay, this is what I've done. Like that. But the thing is, of course, you're way prioritizing the playing, the possibilities aspect of things. And when you're first born, I think that the making a mess necessarily making a mess necessitates cleaning up. So if you're born knowing how to make a mess, you're also born knowing how to clean up. But all of your attention right away is focused on the making a mess part. Now, the second function that comes in that's really conscious, I think, is going to be your third function, FE. And the reason is because even though that SI is kind of a stubby thing there, it's basically not accessible to you yet. And you have to have an extroverted judging function because you have to have a means of dealing with that which you perceive in the external world. Since you're perceiving shit not through a filter of internal intuition, you're receiving it. You're basically, it's like the effect on the input on an audio signal, right? The effect can be either before it comes into the board or after it comes into the board. We have the effect, and you have to have it on one end in this case. You have to have it either, you're going to have that compressor on the front end or on the back end. NI's got it on the back end. The shit already comes in, and then it hits the effect, and then you get it on the other side of the effect. NE hits the data on the outside of the board before it comes in. It's already been parsed out. It's already been split up. It's no longer a whole thing. It no longer can be accessed directly as a whole thing. When your NE comes and starts dealing with it, your NI kind of pieces it back together and goes, oh, that was the whole thing. It's down there somewhere and has to emerge, So regardless, the point being that perceiving function has to have a similar attitude so that you can otherwise you can't judge internally external things without having an external judging mechanism that bridges that for you in some way. And so that's why I think you have to the third one first. And then as you get older, you try to put SI in the third spot. In the second spot. You try to put that in the second spot, and it doesn't work. And it doesn't work because it doesn't work in conjunction with NE. It works in alternation with NE. Because I remember doing things like thinking when I was a little kid about how I should have said something differently. instead of focusing on uh, what I was going to do about it. You know, instead of thinking, well, this is what I should have said differently. I remember just thinking, uh, oh, that went badly. It could have gone better. It could have gone better. That went badly. You know, and not really getting anywhere with it. It sort of implies TI to come in to handle shit and say, well, okay, what are you going to do about it then? And so, since SI fails, TI comes in last, I think, but it comes in and proves itself so much more effective than your third function, which because it came in first and you started working with it first with just extroverted things, extroverted perceiving and extroverted judging, and you go, okay, 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 and but there's nothing really going on inside that says uh, this is how to use that. And so when you finally get a tool in that says this is how you use things, um, then the problem is you no longer you find that third one inadequate now because it's the thing that didn't work, and this new thing is the thing that does work, and it's going to work out like that no matter what two functions they are. It sounds especially good with T, but if it's the other way around, if you got like an ENFP, then they're going to get their third function TE first. So their first approach to dealing with the world is to make sure that it's understandable to others, that others understand logically, not that others' feelings are managed, but that their logic is managed, their understanding is managed. And then they find, well, that's not very effective because people's logic is remarkably resilient to my attack pattern here. And then they decide a better judging function for them is going to be internal feeling. How they actually feel about it is more reliable because other people, when used with the sort of clumsiness of that initially adopted third function, is going to be inadequate to the situation. And then FI will prove more reliable simply because you're a more sophisticated human being when you bring that extra function into play, and so you're able to use it better because you have more. You're able to use it in conjunction with the tool you've already developed. It only seems to you at the time that it's necessarily a better tool because it's the latest to come in, and it becomes your favorite, and then you just kind of that's how you roll from then on out. And then the SI kind of brings up the rear, you know. So that's my thoughts on that. It's keeping in mind that it's mostly speculative, but it feels like it makes sense because of the central question of whether or not individuals need an extroverted judging function to deal with extroverted perceiving, or vice versa.
Wait, so you think your first function is genetic?
Well, I mean, it may be determined inside the womb. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I doubt it's genetic because,
Or at least epigenetic?
well, can you explain the difference between genetic and epigenetic to me?
So a genetic is basically a gene that you have that isn't affected by the environment. The epi gene can be affected by the environment. So, for example, let's take height. Height would be considered epigenetic because you can still have a maximum height that you're going to be, but if you're malnourished as a child, you're not going to be as tall as your genetic height, for example.
I see. Well, I mean, can't. But do the genes change, or is that just a phenotypic difference in the representation of the genes?
The gene does change.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Interesting. So, all right, then it might be epigenetic, I guess. I just have a sense that somehow the whole thing is related to parenting. It would make sense that how you prioritize certain things would be relational to environmental factors in different stages. So, for example, let's say you're born with NE come out with NE, but you're not yet determined to be an ENTP or an ENFP. Let's imagine that's a scenario that's possible. Well, it would seem to me that there was something that happened in the womb, probably, that determines, hey, that determines whether you're going to manifest uh, any. Okay, but then once you're born, that then whatever happened before then is irrelevant. That the new set of circumstances is going to determine the next set of factors. You've experienced them since you were 2 or 3. It helps. I mean, I saw my own daughter, and I could see early on when she was in the crib and stuff, she'd have what I would consider to be an any facial expression, and the looks of that specifically would be a crinkled brow and sort of like a like trying to do shit, like trying to understand things. You can just see it on her face, and right away she displayed. My parents were saying she's just like you were when you were a little kid. She displayed the same propensity for verbalness, verbosity, and she displayed the same propensity for uh, intuitive understanding of logic. When she was really little, I was doing little things like give her syllogisms and see if she could determine if they were valid or not. And she was able to determine validity pretty young, like 4 or something like that. So, I mean, well, you're particularly ADD. Not all ENTPs are quite so ADD as you, T-Sharks. Um, my daughter's less ADD than me, although I think she manifests even less than that now because she's been compelled to develop FE to a more sophisticated level over the course of her childhood than I was, just being a girl. And so that modifies behavior somewhat. Well, I mean, the thing is, not all ENTPs have quite so much trouble calming down, is the point. Delilah is a lot more calm by default than I am. And I suspect I'm a little bit more calm than you by default. Certainly, at least at this age. Probably I wasn't at your age, but at this age I think I'm a little more calm by default. So that's what I mean by that. Is the and that too is a matter of having sufficient reason to choose to execute that level of calmness. You know, it's easy to default back to less restraint if there's no compelling reason to prefer more restraint.
Yeah, if that, like, even, well, there's this, like, I usually take my medicine around 1:30 or 2 o'clock, and up to that point in the morning, I usually wake up, like, at 10 o'clock, no matter what time I go to bed, and I experience these, like, almost hypomania symptoms, and it's just pure NE, and it's like I don't have a base personality or anything. It's just like anything I can think up, my body manifests as. So like I'll be going down the road and I was messing with Erica or whatever, and like I was taking on these personas and I was just acting stupid and yelling and like laughing really hard and just like doing dumb shit. And the only way I would calm down, like not calm down, but just like if like she like if it got physical at all, it was just calming. Or if the music on the radio turned up just a little bit, it was enough to just bring me down to the physical realm for long enough to get my thoughts together.
You've got to. The other thing is there's an aspect to it which is SI related. If you record yourself doing these sort of things in general, and you present them for public scrutiny as well, it causes you to understand your own behaviors differently, and it causes you to perfect them, such that because see the problem with being an NE Dom is we have a big difficulty understanding how to be most effective with our best ideas, and that unavoidably the crowding of any idea with too many other ideas in too small of a context will wash out the whole thing.
Right.
So that's a tricky thing for us. It's something I deal with as well. I think that I'm trying to find a workaround here, like with YouTube's thinking, well, this might be that you can break that, you can turn that rule around if you get enough videos, maybe like that kind of a thing, or other alternatives being that I'm trying to work so I'm more successful at paring down single videos to single topics and or paring down moments within videos to concise presentations of an idea.
When you are talking about an idea where you've had an epiphany or something, how much conscious control do you think you have over your physical like body, like the movement of your body and things like that?
Well, now I have a lot more. I'm a lot more mindful than I was prior to YouTube. YouTube has made me much more aware, and in fact, increasingly, I'd say it becomes less likely to happen that I am in a full state of flow while conversing. Right? I'm still maintaining a certain amount of distance. I think that's what the other types in general do. The thinking, the judgment judgment dominated types, certainly they work in that order. You know, they say, I mean, know first, then speak. It's a challenge for
Right.
us.
I was thinking about this because I was in school, and so many times I've been just told like, I thought Trent was about to fight that guy or something because I will have no conscious control of my body. And I'll be talking or something, and there's not even anything in my head that is saying anything about physical altercation. But like I'll find myself over the top of a table yelling, and I'll become aware, and I'm like, well, holy shit! When did I end up on top of this fucking table in their face? I don't even, and I don't. I'm not. It's not a conscious thing either.
Right. Well, I think that's an example of our seventh function issues where we have what's actually something like anger inside of us. That to the extent that we can feel that emotion of indignation or whatever in the moment as we're arguing with somebody, and then when we're stopped saying the words, we look for that emotion. It's not there at all, and we say, "Well, I'm not feeling anything for real. We're just playing, right?" You know.
Yeah.
But of course, almost no type has that. It's not just an ability. It's a it's almost like a disability, in the sense that because we're expert at perceiving first, and in particular expert at intuition, that we we can live the emotion, be honestly experiencing the emotion, and then when we retract from it, when we're done with the argument and asked to evaluate our actual positions on things, say, "Oh, I actually don't agree with that thing I was just arguing." And to other people, they're like, "But your emotion seemed, by all measures, totally real. You seem genuinely upset."
Yeah,
And
the unfortunate thing about that is I would say is that it can be used because we're so like able to just switch from one side to another. So it's easy for others to contradict us. Like yesterday, you were saying that's like what I was talking about with the me arguing and that when I called the teacher a cunt, and I didn't want to say anything to that kid because he called he said the word or something, and I couldn't say anything about him being allowed to say it because I'd contradict all my previous statements
right, yeah,
because all that shit. So it's a slippery slope. You have to I think it's something ENTPs have to learn consciously not to do, and that's contradict themselves.
well, that's why it's important to develop a core set of arguments that you are gonna go back to and rely on, and know that you're gonna. And as long as you're making arguments consistent with those core principles, then you can be confident you're not going to be contradicting yourself. The other thing is to remind people periodically, if they catch you contradicting yourself, the answer is to quote Walt Whitman and say, "Do I? So I contradict myself. I contain multitudes." And you just fuck it. So what? I contradict myself. That doesn't mean
Yeah.
that you have any reason to conclude what I'm saying is right or wrong because I contradict myself sometimes. That's what's called consistency fallacy.
See, another thing is that I don't usually ever technically contradict myself. It's more of an issue, and the baggage that's tied to the issue I was originally discussing is, I guess,
Yeah,
typically.
in other words, Trent, you're saying I don't contradict myself. I just have a different framework that operates under different principles, and so under that framework it's correct, and under this other framework it's not correct, and that's fine. It's not a contradiction.
Yeah.
It's just your failure to understand there are two different frameworks here.
yeah, that exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's end this episode talking with famous people because it's somewhat segued away from the notion of when one develops one's cognitive functions in childhood. But I enjoyed that last conversation bit with Trenton there because it does elucidate the experience of a person who leads with expert intuition. Thanks for watching, and as always, your memory should include recognition of the need to eat plenty of cheese.